Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ward 13 with John Hopwood. As you can see, once again, I am not John Hopwood. My name is Matt Connerton, but we do have a couple of great guests with us today. One of them right here in the studio with us is a gentleman named John Hopwood. So, John, welcome to Ward 13 with John Hopwood.
Hello,
It's
Matt.
wonderful to have you on.
New experience for me.
Yes. You seem at home. You seem pretty comfortable.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I started my career in TV right here on the Joe Kelly Lavasser show.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which many people never let me forget. Joe and I are friends.
Yes.
Despite our political differences.
Absolutely. And also we have joining us via Skype, David Colapinto, who is an attorney with Cohn and Colapinto. And are you in Washington right now, David?
Yes, I am.
Excellent.
Dave, when this happened, and I know I've told you about it, it's so odd that when you tell the truth, not only are you ignored, but the people that all of a sudden you find yourself a pariah, people that you would talk to, don't want to talk to you anymore. And some people cut you off. You're an informant now. And it's a very strange thing, isn't it, for a whistleblower?
Absolutely. Senator Grassley, who has been a great champion for whistleblowers, often says that the whistleblowers are treated like the skunk at the picnic. And it is. I mean, it's a human reaction, I think, that people shun those who are causing waves in an organization, particularly if their careers or status in society may be jeopardized by associating with people who are, identified as dissenters or informants. And throughout the ages, all types of words have been used to describe whistleblowers as snitches or rats and other types of pejoratives. So it's a very interesting phenomenon, and you can see how people get ostracized in an organization when they do challenge decisions that are made that may be breaking the law and get people in trouble.
National Whistleblower Day is on July 30th. Why? Why is it on July 30th?
Well, it's interesting. My law partner did some research on this and included a chapter in his book about it. And what he discovered was that in 1778, the Continental Congress had actually passed a law on July 30th, 1778, which was the first whistleblower law in America. It was the Continental Congress was before the colonies had actually prevailed over England. But it kind of tells you how different things were viewed then and how remarkable the Continental Congress was and how advanced in their thinking they were when a group of sailors actually blew the whistle on an admiral in the Continental Navy. And what was their concern? Their concern was about the mistreatment and torture of English prisoners in wartime.
Yeah.
And also, concerns about the admiral profiting off of, what were scarce resources for the war effort at that time. And they went to extraordinary efforts to send sailors off of this ship and send a delegation to report this wrongdoing by the commander to the Continental Congress. And as a result, they were charged with criminal libel. And our Continental Congress, instead of covering it up or letting them fend for themselves, actually took a very bold step and passed a formal resolution and actually used money from the treasury of the Continental Congress, which was very scarce at that time in wartime against England, and they actually raised money to pay for these sailors' defense.
Interesting. Yeah. Let's bring it to present day, David, because obviously the kind of the elephant in the room when you're talking about whistleblowers these days is a name everyone knows, Edward Snowden.
Right.
And I personally, by the way, I have a theory that for all the talk about, for those who don't view him as a whistleblower, but view him as a traitor and so forth. You know, they want to get him back. The Obama administration and others talk about getting him back here so they can prosecute him and so forth. My theory is they don't really want that, because if you look at polls, you know, you might see a poll where half of Americans polled think he's a hero, the other half thinks he's a traitor. So it creates an incredible political problem if they do get him back, which I don't think he's ever returning to the U.S. anyway. He'd be a fool to, I think. But if he were to come back, then what do? Do you execute him for treason? Well, that's going to upset at least half of the people who have an opinion on this. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on Edward Snowden in terms of that political problem, and anything else that you would like to say about that.
Well, I think it's an age-old political problem in the United States when you use laws like the Espionage Act against whistleblowers. Mm-hmm. And it really goes back to our dark recesses of the Cold War and anti-communist period, when when you're calling people who want to do the right thing spies.
Right.
And so you're absolutely right. If Ed Snowden were to return to the United States, he would be branded a spy, would be charged with violations of the Espionage Act, and he would have to, if he came back to the United States, those who have even been, raising the prospect in our government of, some sort of deal that would be a plea bargain, he would have to serve time in prison. Mm-hmm. So that's the choice, and that's the treatment of people that fall outside the system of legal protections, which, tells you a lot about how authoritarian our system has become, and why a person like Ed Snowden, to blow the whistle on something like what the law breaking by the National Security Agency and our intelligence community, how you could not legally blow the whistle in the United States. And I think that's a sad commentary about the state of our laws protecting people who work in the intelligence community and for our government. And it is at odds with our history and all of the principles and all of the nice things that we say about wanting to protect people and give them the voice to report illegal activity.
Right.
So those are my initial thoughts on Ed Snowden. And it's unfortunate that, I think it's a result of a broken system that doesn't fulfill the promise of being allowing people who work for intelligence agencies to report wrongdoing and criminal conduct to the appropriate authorities, to Congress, etc., and ultimately let the American people know that these laws are being broken by our government agencies.
Didn't you and other whistleblower attorneys years ago, when the Obama administration came in, actually warn if there were no protections for people in the national security complex, that something like an Edward Snowden situation would happen?
Mm. Yeah, this was something that was warned for years, and leading up to the 2008 election, there was legislation in Congress, and most of the major candidates for president in 2008 supported this. Really was a bipartisan effort which would have made it legal for someone like Ed Snowden, who worked in the intelligence community, to report illegal conduct, to make classified disclosures to Congress.
Yeah.
And if he or she suffered retaliation for doing so, would have had a right to ultimately bring their case to a real court and have a trial on their whistleblower retaliation claim before a court and a jury.
Okay.
And that would have been a major advancement, and would have, for the first time, given, legal protections, real effective legal protections for people who worked in intelligence agencies in the United States, and bring them on a par with other employees in the private sector who for years have had access to courts and juries in whistleblower retaliation cases. And that was something that received a lot of attention, a lot of support. And that bill was actually added as one of the approved amendments to the stimulus bill, which was the first bill passed when Obama took the presidency.
Yes.
And it passed the House of Representatives, and had that bill been enacted into law in the Senate, it would have been signed by the president because the stimulus bill had to be enacted. And we may have prevented the problem with Ed Snowden. Ed Snowden might have had a place to go to report his wrongdoing, and he would have received protection if he was the subject of retaliation. However, to make a long story short, what happened in 2009 was, you may remember that Senator Collins from Maine Obama needed one Republican to vote for the stimulus bill in order to get it through the Senate.
It was close, yeah.
And she went to the Oval Office and had a list of items that she wanted removed from the stimulus bill in order to get her support. And the Whistleblower Protection Act amendment, which was on the stimulus bill, was one of the items that she demanded to be removed in exchange for her vote. And with that single act, killed the effort to give real protections for whistleblowers in the intelligence community and across the government.
So really, if that one thing had become law, Snowden today would be not a traitor by under anyone's estimation legally, correct?
Right, and he, it's a tragedy that someone would have to go to Hong Kong to talk to a reporter who works for a British newspaper in order to blow the whistle on wrongdoing here in the United States. There should be legal channels for people who work in that community, even with classified material. Because just because things are classified doesn't mean that these agencies don't break the law, or that there is no fraud or waste of spending. There's a lot of that going on. These are large bureaucracies, after all. They're government bureaucracies, and they're going to run afoul of the law.
Well, especially in a post-Patriot Act world. I would think that creates a situation where there needs to be that much more vigilance. What about the False Claims Act? This is something I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, the False Claims Act has been around since the Civil War in the United States. People call it Lincoln's Law.
Okay.
And it empowers people who work in government contracting who are aware of fraud against the United States by contractors.
Okay.
It's been amended several times, and it has the most modern version of it came into existence in 1986. And it has become a huge field, and it has been a driving force to hold government contractors accountable when they double bill the government. It has, wherever federal money is spent, there can be fraud against the government, and it has a large part of it. You may read in the newspapers a lot about these large settlements that the government gets from big pharma companies or hospitals for Medicare fraud. Those are usually the result of a whistleblower who worked as an insider who alerted the government to that fraud.
Okay.
And as a result of coming forward and reporting that fraud, they are entitled to between 15 and 30% of the recovery ultimately obtained by the United States. This is fraud. These are recoveries. Billions and billions of dollars have been recovered under this law that wouldn't have been recovered but for whistleblowers coming forward. And
so there's a monetary reward for being a whistleblower.
It is a monetary award. It is different than the retaliation laws that exist to make people whole who report wrongdoing, get fired, and then years later either get their job back or get some monetary damages to make them whole.
Okay.
What the concept behind the False Claims Act law is that you need a monetary incentive in order to encourage people to come forward with these allegations in the first place.
Yeah, because it's a big
who's
risk.
Going to report that this a large corporation is stealing money from the government unless there is something that will reward them for doing so, rather than just having, oh, well, we'll get you your job back 10 years from now.
Right.
That's not enough to incentivize people to take the risk, and unfortunately to do the right thing. It takes some incentive to do that.
Especially when, even if you get to keep your job, you've now created for yourself, I would imagine in most cases, an extremely hostile working environment. Which nobody
exactly
likes.
Right. You're ostracized from your organization. You're shunned. You lose your job very often. It extends beyond your own company. That people don't like to hire whistleblowers. I don't think it has done much to enhance people's resumes to put whistleblower on there. So
it hasn't helped me much, Dave.
and it ruins careers. So it's a recognition that in order to get the information of major frauds against the United States, you need to incentivize these folks to come forward.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that that law has worked so well. It has become the most effective whistleblower protection law in the country, probably the world.
Really?
And it has had a tremendous effect. It has had a deterrent effect within corporations, because many of our largest corporations are government contractors, and they don't want to face these large fines and recoveries. There's a treble damages provision if they're caught ripping off the government. So there has been it's been very, very effective.
Yeah.
To the point where it has now served as a model in other laws. There are other versions of the False Claims Act that are now applicable to, for example, to all publicly traded companies. The SEC has its own reward law system, which was part of the Dodd-Frank Financial Reform Act. And that has a very similar process where it pays rewards and has a unique features where it actually allows people to go anonymously. So if you, even managers or board members of a company, a publicly traded company, could anonymously blow the whistle to the Securities and Exchange Commission and blow the whistle on securities fraud.
Hey, Dave, so why don't you tell us about National Whistleblower Day and why should whistleblowers be honored?
Yes, and I think that what it is it's a recognition, and this is something that has bipartisan support, by the way. This is something that has passed the United States Senate now twice, and there is, as a result of that, or building upon that, there's now actually a whistleblower caucus in the United States Senate, and there are 10 senators that are members of that caucus. 5 Democrats and 5 Republicans. And it's a recognition that more needs to be done to protect the gains that have been made, to protect whistleblowers and to encourage whistleblowers to report violations of law. And so that's what National Whistleblower Appreciation Day is all about. And if people want to hear more about it, they can go to a website that we've set up to promote Whistleblower Day, and that is nationalwhistleblowerday.org.
Okay.
And you can read the some of the historical materials about the first Whistleblower Act from 1778 that we talked about earlier in the show. You can read the resolution that was enacted last year. You can take action to encourage your members of Congress to support this. And it's really a first step, in many ways a symbolic or ceremonial step, but an important one if you want to change the culture in our government and our corporations.
Absolutely. We are almost out of time. Is there anything else we wanted to make sure we get in? July 30th, of course, National Whistleblower Day.
There's going to be it's going to be a conference. Yeah. We only got 2 minutes, Dave.
Yeah, so there will be a luncheon that day in the Kennedy Caucus Room in one of the Senate office buildings, and members from the Senate Whistleblower Caucus will be there, and some whistleblowers will speak, and others. And I think that this is something that we're looking to see occur every year.
Great.
You did win the greatest whistleblower award in history, did you not?
Really?
Your firm, Cohn and Colapinto.
Yeah, and this was another one of these whistleblower reward laws for major tax fraud. And people may have heard of Bradley Birkenfeld, who blew the whistle on Swiss banking, illegal U.S. taxpayers who were hiding their assets in Switzerland without paying taxes here. And he was awarded $104 million by the IRS for turning in billions and billions of dollars that has been returned to the U.S. Treasury as a result.
That's a pretty nice monetary reward.
And there's a lot more. There is a lot more.
Well,
if either Dave or Steve comes on, you can talk about how much fraud still remains to be rooted out.
Absolutely. Well, we got to wrap up, but David, thank you so much. David Colapinto, an attorney for Cohn and Colapinto in Washington, D.C. This has been fascinating. Thank you so much for joining us via Skype.